Sometimes, one act of kindness can change everything. Tonight, I'm going to share with you the story of a young orphan boy, Elijah. A boy who had nothing, no family, no wealth, no home of his own. But one night, on a lonely road, he risked his life to save an old man trapped in a burning car. What Elijah didn't know was that this man wasn't just anybody. He was a billionaire whose life would soon be forever tied to his. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss the powerful stories we bring to life right here on this channel. The evening sky painted itself in streaks of orange and purple as Elijah Carter, a 14-year-old black orphan boy, dragged his worn-out backpack along the cracked sidewalk. The bag was nearly empty, just a notebook, a pencil stub, and an old photograph of his late parents. Elijah had lived in the local orphanage for 6 years, ever since a car accident had taken both his mother and father. Though the staff were kind, the orphanage was always noisy, crowded, and filled with kids fighting for attention. Elijah had grown used to being invisible. After finishing a day of odd jobs, stacking boxes at a grocery store and sweeping floors at a diner, he walked alone, saving the few dollars he earned. Unlike other kids his age, he never thought about toys or video games. He thought about survival, about what it might feel like to have a family again, and about the small dream he kept tucked away in his heart. One day becoming an engineer to build machines that saved lives, so no one else would have to go through what he had. That night, as Elijah reached the edge of town, he heard something unusual. A violent screech of tires echoed across the quiet street, followed by a thunderous crash that made the ground tremble beneath his shoes. Elijah froze. His heart pounded, but curiosity, and something deeper, something braver, pushed him forward. He sprinted toward the sound, his sneakers slapping the pavement, until he came upon the sight. A luxury black car had slammed into a tree just off the road. Steam hissed from the crumpled hood, and smoke curled into the twilight air. Inside the vehicle, through the cracked windshield, Elijah saw the silhouette of an old man slumped over the steering wheel. Without hesitation, Elijah dropped his bag and ran closer. His legs trembled, but his voice was steady. "Sir, sir, can you hear me?" he shouted, tugging at the hot metal of the door handle. The man inside groaned faintly, blood trickling from his temple. His silver hair caught the fading light, his tailored suit crumpled and stained. He was no ordinary man, but Elijah had no way of knowing that. All Elijah saw was someone who needed help. Gritting his teeth, the boy pulled with all his strength, smoke stinging his eyes. The door creaked, then burst open. Elijah reached inside, trying to rouse the unconscious stranger. In that moment, Elijah didn't think of fear, or danger, or the fact that nobody would ever expect a poor orphan to risk his life for someone else. He only thought of saving him. Little did Elijah know, the old man he was dragging from the wreckage was not just anyone. He was a billionaire whose life, from this night onward, would become entangled with his in ways neither of them could ever imagine. Smoke billowed from the crushed hood of the luxury car, the acrid smell burning Elijah's nostrils. His small hands shook as he tried to pull the old man out of the driver's seat. The man's breathing was shallow, his eyes half closed. "Stay with me, sir," Elijah whispered, panic creeping into his voice. "Please don't die." The man groaned, but his body remained limp. Elijah dug deep, summoning strength he didn't know he had. He hooked his arms under the stranger's and tugged with all his might. The man's weight dragged heavily, his fine leather shoes scraping against the gravel. Just as Elijah pulled him clear of the smoking car, a loud pop echoed from under the hood, then flames licked upward, consuming the engine. Elijah stumbled backward, shielding the man with his own small frame as the fire roared. "Somebody help!" Elijah cried, his voice cracking against the empty night. But no one came. The road was deserted. It was just him and the old man, the crash site glowing in fiery orange behind them. Elijah pressed 2 fingers to the man's neck, searching for a pulse the way he had once seen on television. Relief washed over him when he felt a faint thump beneath his fingertips. The old man stirred slightly, murmuring incoherently. His lips moved, forming words Elijah couldn't understand. Desperation surged in Elijah's chest. "I can't let you die," he muttered, his voice trembling. With great effort, Elijah lifted the man's arm over his shoulder and half-carried, half-dragged him toward the roadside. His legs ached, his back screamed, but he didn't stop. Not until the 2 of them collapsed on the cold grass far enough from the flaming wreck. For the first time, Elijah got a clear look at the stranger. His silver hair was neatly combed despite the blood trickling down his face. His wrist gleamed with a watch worth more than anything Elijah had ever seen. His shoes alone probably cost more than the orphanage could raise in a month. "Who are you?" Elijah whispered, puzzled. The old man coughed, finally forcing out a few words. "Help, call phone." His voice was weak but commanding. Elijah realized he didn't have a phone. Orphans didn't get luxuries like that. He looked around frantically, spotting the man's phone still inside the wreck, glowing faintly from the shattered console. The flames were spreading fast, but Elijah didn't hesitate. With one deep breath, he ran back toward the burning car, ducked low against the smoke, and grabbed the phone. His hands burned from the heat as he stumbled out, coughing violently. The man's phone unlocked with a face scan, and Elijah quickly tapped the emergency dial. His small voice shook as he begged the operator to send help. Minutes later, though it felt like hours, the sound of sirens split the night. Red and blue lights flashed as firefighters and paramedics rushed onto the scene. They took the old man from Elijah's arms, placing him on a stretcher. One of the paramedics, a woman with kind eyes, crouched to Elijah's level. "You saved this man's life, son. If you hadn't pulled him out, that fire would have—" She stopped herself, glancing back at the burning wreck. "You're a brave young man." Elijah, breathless and trembling, just nodded. He didn't feel brave. He felt terrified. As the ambulance doors closed and the old man was whisked away, Elijah stood on the side of the road, covered in smoke and sweat, staring after the flashing lights. He had no idea that this single act of courage would change his life forever. Elijah stood alone on the roadside, the glow of the fire behind him fading as firefighters finally tamed the blaze. His clothes reeked of smoke, his hands were blackened with soot, and his lungs ached from the acrid air. The ambulance had already disappeared into the distance, carrying the injured old man away. Elijah suddenly felt small again, just a boy with nothing, staring at a night sky that offered no answers. Who was he? Elijah murmured to himself. The man's expensive suit, his gleaming watch, his polished car, it was obvious he wasn't ordinary. But why had he been driving alone, so late, down this nearly abandoned road? Before Elijah could think further, a police officer approached him. He was tall, with a stern face that softened when he saw the boy. "You okay, son?" the officer asked, shining a flashlight over him. I think so," Elijah replied, his voice hoarse. "Did you see what happened here?" Elijah nodded and explained everything, the screech of tires, the crash, how he had pulled the man from the burning car. The officer listened, occasionally jotting notes into a small pad. When Elijah finished, the man placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did a very brave thing tonight. You may have saved that man's life." Elijah lowered his eyes. Anybody would have done it. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. Plenty of people might have turned away, afraid of the fire, unwilling to risk their lives for a stranger. The officer offered to drive Elijah back to the orphanage. Inside the patrol car, Elijah stared out the window as the city lights blurred past. His mind raced, replaying the crash again and again. When they reached the orphanage gates, the officer gave him a nod. "Get some rest, son. You deserve it." Inside, the matron of the orphanage, Mrs. Jacobs, scolded Elijah at first. "You're filthy, Elijah. Where have you been?" But when he told her what happened, her expression shifted from anger to shock. "You pulled a man out of a burning car," she whispered. For once, the noisy dining hall fell silent, every orphan staring at Elijah with wide eyes. Elijah simply shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. He needed help. That's all. That night, lying in his bunk, Elijah couldn't sleep. His muscles ached, and his mind swirled with questions. Who was the man? Was he alive? Would Elijah ever see him again? In the hospital across town, the old man stirred in his hospital bed, doctors rushing to stabilize him. He asked weakly for his phone, and with trembling hands, he whispered a name. Elijah. The billionaire didn't yet know who the boy was. But he knew one thing for certain. His life had been saved by someone extraordinary. Morning sunlight spilled across the city, but Elijah woke still restless. At the orphanage breakfast table, other kids whispered about him, some with awe, others with envy. He picked at his toast, avoiding their eyes. He didn't care about attention. He only wanted to know if the old man was alive. Across town, in a private wing of St. Mary's Hospital, the old man opened his eyes. His head was bandaged, his body weak, but his sharp gaze revealed years of wisdom and power. His name was Arthur Langston, a billionaire industrialist who built his empire from scratch. Known to the public as a ruthless businessman, few knew the gentler side of him, the side that still mourned a family he had lost long ago. "Sir, you need to rest," the doctor said. "You're lucky that boy found you when he did." Arthur's mind latched onto that word. Boy. He remembered a small figure pulling him, the determined voice urging him to live. "Find him," Arthur rasped. His assistant, a middle-aged woman named Clara, leaned closer. "Find who, sir?" "The boy. The one who saved me. I need to see him." Clara nodded, though she looked uncertain. "We don't even have his name. The police mentioned an orphan, but—" "Then search every orphanage in this city," Arthur interrupted, his voice steadier now. "I owe him more than words." Meanwhile, Elijah spent the afternoon working at the grocery store, stacking shelves with quiet focus. But he noticed something strange. Two well-dressed strangers asking questions in the neighborhood. They spoke with shopkeepers, pointed at the orphanage, and scribbled in notebooks. By evening, word had reached Mrs. Jacobs. She pulled Elijah aside, her eyes wide. "Elijah, someone's looking for you." His heart skipped. "Me? Why?" Before she could answer, a sleek black car pulled up outside the orphanage gates, the kind Elijah had only seen in magazines. From it stepped Clara, Arthur's assistant, with a chauffeur by her side. She scanned the yard, her eyes landing on the boy. "You," she said softly, approaching Elijah. "Were you the one who pulled Mr. Langston from the crash?" Elijah shifted nervously, unsure how to respond. I just tried to help." Clara studied him carefully, then smiled. "He wants to meet you." Every child in the orphanage gasped. Some stared in disbelief, others in jealousy. Elijah, however, felt only confusion. Why would a powerful man like that want anything to do with a boy like him? Yet deep down, something stirred, an invisible thread tugging their lives closer together. Elijah's heart pounded as he sat in the back seat of the luxury car, the leather seats far softer than anything he had ever touched. Clara sat beside him, glancing at the boy who looked both nervous and determined. "You don't need to be afraid," she assured him. "Mr. Langston isn't a man easily impressed. But he hasn't stopped asking for you since he woke up." Elijah kept his hands folded tightly in his lap. He wasn't afraid of the man. He was afraid of what would happen once this was over. Billionaires didn't keep company with orphans. Whatever this meeting was, it couldn't last. The car glided into the private hospital entrance. Nurses and security staff nodded respectfully as Clara led Elijah inside. They took an elevator to the top floor, where Arthur Langston lay in a large suite more like a penthouse than a patient's room. The old man looked frail, his head wrapped in white bandages. Yet his eyes were sharp, piercing, as they landed on Elijah. A slow smile crept across his face. "There he is," Arthur whispered. "My rescuer." Elijah froze in the doorway, unsure whether to step closer. Clara nudged him gently. "Go on, dear." Arthur extended a trembling hand. Elijah walked forward and shook it awkwardly. "You risked your life for me," Arthur said, his voice weak but steady. "Why?" "You could have run away." Elijah swallowed. "Because you needed help. Nobody else was there." Arthur chuckled softly. Such a simple answer. Yet most grown men would have left me to die. He studied the boy carefully, as though memorizing every feature. "What's your name, son?" "Elijah Carter, sir." "Carter," Arthur repeated, the name echoing in his mind. "Well, Elijah, you saved a man who has more money than he knows what to do with. But in that moment, you treated me like a man, not a billionaire. That's rare." Elijah shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't do it for money. I didn't want you to die." Arthur's smile deepened. "Good. Because what I want to give you is worth far more than money." Elijah blinked in confusion. "Sir." Arthur leaned back, his eyes never leaving the boy. "You see, Elijah, I've spent decades building companies, signing contracts, and earning wealth. But in all those years, I lost something I can never replace: family. My wife, my daughter, they're gone." His voice cracked, raw with pain. Elijah lowered his gaze. He knew what it meant to lose family. Arthur continued softly. "When I looked into your eyes, as you dragged me from that fire, I saw something I haven't seen in years: courage. And I knew then God sent you to me for a reason." Elijah's heart thumped wildly. He couldn't make sense of the man's words. Why would a billionaire see anything in him, a poor orphan boy with nothing but a dream? Arthur's voice grew firm despite his frailty. "Elijah, I want to know everything about you. Where you live. What you dream about. From this day on, your life will never be the same." Elijah stood speechless, his world tilting on its axis. He had no idea what the billionaire truly meant. But destiny had just opened the door. The hospital room fell silent after Arthur's words. Elijah shifted nervously, unsure what to say. He had never been the center of anyone's attention before, let alone a billionaire's. Arthur studied him, noticing the boy's torn shoes, his faded shirt, and the way he carried himself with quiet dignity despite it all. "Elijah," Arthur said softly, "tell me about yourself." Elijah hesitated, then explained. He told Arthur about losing his parents when he was only 8, about the orphanage, the crowded dormitories, and the long nights he spent staring at the ceiling wondering why life had chosen him to suffer. He mentioned the odd jobs he took after school, not for luxuries, but for basic things: soap, notebooks, a decent pair of socks. Arthur listened intently, his eyes never leaving the boy. When Elijah spoke of his dream, to one day become an engineer who built machines that could save lives, the old man's lips curved into a faint smile. "You have ambition," Arthur said. "Most boys your age are thinking about games or mischief, but you're thinking about the world." Elijah looked down. "Dreams don't mean much when you don't have anyone to believe in you." Arthur's heart clenched. The words struck deeper than Elijah could imagine. Once upon a time, Arthur's own daughter had said something similar before tragedy took her away. The old man took a deep breath, then made a decision. "Elijah," Arthur said firmly, "I owe you my life. But I don't want to repay you with money. Money fades. What I want to give you is a future." Elijah blinked, startled. "A future?" "Yes," Arthur continued. "I want to sponsor your education, your dreams, everything you need. And more than that," he paused, his eyes glistening, "I want to be family to you." The boy's mouth fell open. "Family?" Arthur nodded slowly. "I have no heirs. My empire, my wealth, my legacy, it's all meaningless without someone worthy to inherit it. From the moment you pulled me out of that car, I knew. You're the kind of soul this world needs. Brave, selfless, strong." Elijah felt his chest tighten. Was this real? Could this man truly be offering him the one thing he had craved for years? Not wealth, not status, but belonging? Clara, who had stood silently in the background, stepped forward, her eyes wide with emotion. "Mr. Langston, are you saying what I think you're saying?" Arthur's gaze never wavered. "Yes. If Elijah will accept, I want him not only under my care, I want him as my son." The words hit Elijah like a storm. He felt dizzy, torn between disbelief and hope. For years, he had lived in a world where nobody chose him. And now, a billionaire was offering him the chance to be chosen, not for pity, but for love and respect. Tears welled in Elijah's eyes. He couldn't even form the words. Arthur reached out his hand. "What do you say, Elijah?" The boy stared at it, his heart pounding louder than ever. This was more than an offer. It was the moment that would change his life forever. Elijah stood frozen, staring at Arthur Langston's outstretched hand. His heart raced as the old man's words echoed in his ears. "I want you as my son." For a boy who had known nothing but loneliness, the offer felt unreal. His throat tightened. "Why me?" he whispered, his voice trembling. Arthur smiled gently. "Because you saved me when you had nothing to gain. That tells me everything I need to know. Money can buy many things, Elijah, but it cannot buy a pure heart. And you have one." Tears blurred Elijah's vision. Slowly, he reached forward and placed his small hand into Arthur's trembling one. At that moment, the orphan boy and the billionaire sealed a bond neither could have imagined. From that day forward, Elijah's life transformed. Arthur arranged for Elijah to leave the orphanage and move into his vast estate, a mansion with marble floors, sweeping gardens, and hallways filled with art. For the first time, Elijah had his own room. A bed with soft sheets. A desk with books waiting for him. A place that felt like home. At first, Elijah was overwhelmed. He wasn't used to grand dinners, private tutors, or chauffeurs waiting by the door. But Arthur never let him forget where he came from. He encouraged Elijah's dream of engineering, enrolling him in the best schools and giving him access to workshops where he could build, create, and invent. "Elijah," Arthur often said, "knowledge is the true wealth. Use it wisely, and you'll change the world." Clara became like an aunt, guiding him with patience. The staff at the mansion, initially doubtful of the boy from the orphanage, soon grew to admire his humility and determination. Elijah never flaunted his new life. He carried his past with him, always remembering the nights he went to bed hungry, the friends he left behind at the orphanage, and the fire that could have claimed a man's life. Months passed, and the bond between Arthur and Elijah deepened. Arthur, once a lonely billionaire with no heirs, now smiled more often. He attended Elijah's school competitions, listened to his ideas, and even shared stories of his own struggles. One evening, as they sat together in the study, Arthur looked at Elijah with pride. "You know, son," he said softly, "the night you pulled me from that wreck, I thought my story was ending. But because of you, it was only beginning again." Elijah felt warmth in his chest. For the first time in years, he no longer felt like just an orphan. He felt chosen, loved. Years later, the world would come to know Elijah Carter not as an orphan, but as the brilliant young man who carried on Arthur Langston's legacy, using wealth and innovation not for greed, but for good. But in his heart, Elijah never forgot the truth. All it took was one act of courage, one selfless decision on a lonely road, to turn a forgotten boy into the son of a billionaire. And it all began the night he chose to save a life.